Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I'm here with my homegirl, my partner in crime, Miss Yvette Carnell. How you doing today, Yvette?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing really well. I'm awfully red. I got a new camera today too. Do I look? Am
You
I
got a lot going
shining?
on.
Am I bright red? Am I apple red?
You read enough. You read enough. You read
All
enough.
right, all right. I'm well read. There you go.
Yes.
All right. So you called me today and you told me that that the Root, the black news company that was already owned by white people is now no longer owned by the previous white people, but a group of other people. But they're not white. They're it's a Latino company,
Is they're
Univision.
on they've been bought by Univision. Univision. So
Univision. Oh.
yes. So what is it? The biggest what did they describe themselves about their website? The biggest Spanish speaking network in the world, I guess. So they are
Mm.
now proud owners of the number one in terms of traffic or whatever black website
Mm.
in America.
Okay. So, so when these Negroes were sold, did they sell themselves, or did someone sell the Negroes to someone else?
I don't know. I figured, co-founder Skip Gates, sold to someone else. He sold the first time and he's selling the second time. So I don't think ownership is very important in some circles, and
Mm.
I think that's problematic.
So, why is it problematic? I mean, Negroes, we've been owned for the 400 years. Why is it a problem for us to be owned in 2015? Why are
I
you
mean,
hating? Why are you
I mean,
hating?
I mean, look how that's worked out. Yeah, we have been on for a number of years, and look how that's worked out for us. I mean, slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, cut out a New Deal, no political party. In terms of lobbying, no lobbying power, no financial power, like not owning stuff and not being able to tell our own stories really hasn't worked out well for us. And what we like to do all the time is sit around and complain. Oh my God, look at how awful Don Lemon is. Oh my God, look at how awful these people are. Look at how they point out this one black guy who's the one black biker amongst all of these white thuggish, bikers, and they're all killing each other. And they put out the media is so awful. And then when you're like, hey, let's own something. They're like, well, it's not a big deal. We don't have the capital. Let's just, let's just take that capital from the powers that be, from white supremacists, whoever, and just go for it. It's just
Mm.
like, no, like, how can you not own your own story? If there's one thing that you need to own, it's your story. This
Mm.
is our story. And if we don't tell it, somebody else will. So it's just kind of funny to me to see the root go from I guess white ownership to maybe Latino ownership. I don't know who owns Univision, but it's just kind of being handed around to everybody but black people, even though it
Mm.
was co-founded by a black professor.
Almost like being passed from one plantation to the next, that kind of thing.
Yes, we don't
Wow.
get tired of it. We don't get tired of it. Like ah, no
Well,
ownership. Like we don't see the value in like owning the machine.
mm. Well, was it ever our option to even own the root in the first place? I mean, was the root ever really ours anyway? I mean, we know what Gates does. If we like it or not, we Gates is Gates. But I mean, it wasn't his. I mean, he owned a piece of it, but from what I understand, it wasn't entirely his. So, I mean, did we were we ever deluding ourselves even to think that the root was something that we even have the right to even pretend to think that we own just because they serve information to black people?
Well, I think at the time in which Skip Gates decided that he wanted to co-found something, or whoever had this inkling to do something when it was done, I don't understand why it wasn't done without having to give up ownership. I mean, yeah, it's hard, and you and I are in it, so we understand how hard it is, and it can be heavy lifting. But I don't understand why, if you have this bright idea, and you had this idea a long time ago. The root's been around since the root's been around for a long time now. I just read how long it was been around, but I can't remember now. But when you look at that, like, I don't understand why the idea isn't, okay, I can own something, that disseminates information, to African Americans, as opposed to I can, get capital to put forth something, or to disseminate something, or to create something that will work for the African American community. So I'm just, in terms of, especially in terms of what we do, in terms of black media, I'm really in favor of ownership. And that has a lot to do with the fact that there are not a lot of black media operations in the game. There are blogs here and there, but there are not a lot of big voices that can reach a lot of people. There are not a lot of big magazines that do that. You have Ebony, News One, you have The Root, you have the Griot, and like a handful of others. So I'm always in favor of like owning that thing, of owning that thing, especially considering where we are. This is the new age. You don't necessarily need $10 million to do this. You know what I mean? So that makes me with the gates wide open like that. Why wouldn't you own it? Especially when you look at Skip Gates, and he already had a job. It wasn't like you were in desperate need of an influx of cash.
Mm. That's a good point. I mean, first you start off with the fact that whenever you want to conquer a territory or a group of people, one of the first things you want to occupy is the media, because the media is how they share information with one another. And then of course you want to kill off the smart people and the leaders, because those are the ones who might distract from what you're trying to do when you are an occupying force. And black people have been occupied. And one of the things that we have to understand is that we lose a lot of our security, our social and political security, by not having any ownership stake in the channels through which we communicate with each other. And then at that point, when you're talking about ownership, a lot of the reason it seems that we let our ownership go, or we don't try to reach out for ownership for the things that are important to us, is because so many black businesses are starved for capital. As you mentioned, they're trying to get access to that capital that they want to expand and to do other things. And but the thing about capital is that there are at least a couple ways to get it. You can get it through taking on some debt. Just borrowing the money from a bank. A bank will loan you money, and as long as you pay them back on time, they're not going to tell you what to do typically, unless things get really crazy. But then the other one other option, and actually there are more options, but these are the two major options. The other one is equity ownership, where you tell someone, hey, we need money. They say, okay, I'll give you money, but you have to give me half the company. You got to give me 10%, 50%, 70%, whatever. And so I think that as a community, it seems like we're always grappling with that access to capital issue. And what ultimately happens is that, in my opinion, in order for us to really get to the point where we're really building things and owning things as we build them, we have to kind of tone it down a little bit in terms of just some of these materialistic excesses that some of these members of the leadership feel like they need to have. And what I mean by that is, I think about one media outlet. I won't say the name of it, but I know they're having financial problems. But when I went to just kind of check out their operation, I saw that there was a lot of money being wasted. There were a lot of people who were spending, they were spending thousands of dollars on ridiculous parties, and the CEO drove this really fancy car, lived in this mansion, and they were spending money, thousands of dollars on expensive vacations, trying to live this wealthy lifestyle that they feel that they're supposed to live because they are an esteemed elite member of society. And I didn't get a sense that there was kind of like this buckle down mentality that you kind of have to have when you're really trying to build a business. Like when you're really trying to build something and trying to maintain ownership, you pretty much have to skim your lifestyle down. I mean, I know that when I was trying to build Your Black World, and as I'm building it, you've never seen me run around here like a baller. I enjoy, a couple of things every now and then, but you won't see me driving down the street in a Bentley. You won't see me living in a mansion, because I'm taking the capital I have access to and pouring it back into the business, pouring it back into the people that I'm working with, so that I can build this thing without having to sell it to somebody just so I can pay my expensive mortgage. And so, because the point you made was very good. Henry Louis Gates, he's probably worth millions of dollars. So I'm wondering, is there some way that this deal could have been structured such that he and a group of black investors could have maintained control of this company and made it a legitimately black-owned company? Because I think that when it comes to like that day-to-day functionality of the Root, in terms of reporting on black stories and stuff like that, for the most part, I think that ownership piece won't kick in a whole lot on a day-to-day basis most of the time if they kind of have a hands-off approach. But it does kick in like in those crucial times, like when it's time to really take a stand that represents the interests of black people, but doesn't represent the interests of your overseer. Then your overseer steps in and says, no, you can't write about that, or no, you can't report on that, or no, you're going to do what the Democratic Party is telling you to do, or whatever. And I've seen that too. I've seen that happen with another black-owned media outlet I worked with. And I remember, I was literally told, don't write this about Obama, don't write this about Sharpton, and so those sorts of things come into play, and you can't really represent the interests of the people. You have to represent the interests of the people who are paying the bills. What do you think?
No, I think that's true, and I think that goes to like how we communicate with each other and how we sacrifice to make that communication happen. A part of we operate on kind of a shoestring budget. I remember I get donations online a lot of the time to kind of subsidize, and that comes in handy when I need to take care of things when the server goes down and I need to transition very quickly. And so I also think part of the responsibility goes in the Black community too, because you have to be there and you have to support the people that support you. But another part of me is just like there has to be there what you discussed earlier in terms of a willingness to sacrifice for it. This idea that I am entitled, I deserve this. I write for this magazine, I own this website, so I should have this kind of car. I should be doing this in my life. I should be able to spend this. No, there is no entitlement. If you want something, you kind of go for it, and you kind of save your pennies and put everything into this passion. And the reason I'm here is because I don't want to have to go through a filter in terms of Black news. I want to be able to put the headline that I want on it and the content that I want on it, and I don't want anyone to be able to say to me or to want to say to me, "Hey, Yvette, you're pushing too hard. You're saying too much." Why? Why would I put myself through that? I want to be able to communicate to the people, to the Black people who come to my website in the language that they understand and language that I understand, and have a very honest conversation without this buffer in between us telling me what I can and cannot say. And so that's so important. It's very interesting because Ida B. Wells said this a long time ago when she was writing about lynchings and the things that were happening to Black people. She said during that time, hey, Black people have to start supporting Black media more. We're the only ones who are going to tell this story. And she talked about how distrustful the white media was and how they framed arguments in such a way that sort of disparaged Black people and kind of caricatured us as like these, especially, Black men as like these beasts, who had to be kept away from white women. And it was only the Black media who came in and kind of dispelled this. So it's interesting to me that, Ida B. Wells Barnett could be saying that today and it would still be true. And, we need, and I'm not saying anything against Univision. I'm sure they're a great media company, and I'm not saying anything against Latino media. I don't want anybody to construe it that way. But every demographic in this country is very different, and every demographic in this country has a very different experience. The experience of Black people in this country has some similarities to the experience of Latinos, but there are other places where we diverge, even in terms of sometimes how long we've been here, the experiences that we've had here. So I still think that we should be able to tell our own stories. Now that doesn't mean that you won't have reporters, Black reporters shouldn't be at the Washington Post or the New York Times and everywhere else, but there still should be a safe space for us. Just like we have HBCUs, we still have to have institutions in the Black community, because what is a community without its institutions?
Well, that would be our community. We don't have institutions because we've lost the understanding of the value of even having and building institutions. A lot of people think that integration really was disintegration of Black institutions. We abandoned our own stuff so we can go run up under the white man and sell ourselves to the highest bidder because we don't know the difference between being a high-paid slave and being a slave. And one of the things that's very interesting too is with that point you made about the media kind of changing the story around. There are so many examples of how white media has used their power to shape narratives that were to their own benefit or to the benefit of the elite at the expense of either the American people or Black American people. One example I can think of is that movie Kill the Messenger, which is a very good movie about the guy who was the first guy to make the link where the CIA was letting drugs into the Black community during the Iran-Contra situation. Mm-hmm. And they did his name was Gary something. I should know his last name, but Gary Webb. And basically the media, he ended up winning. I think he won a Pulitzer for that story, where he connected all the dots. And they immediately, the New York Times and I would say maybe it was the New York Times, the Washington Post, and I think the LA Times and a couple other major publications began the process of trying to tear him apart and tear apart his story and all this. And they were doing this on behalf of the CIA. Because the CIA wouldn't comment on any of this. They wouldn't give him access to any information to prove or disprove what he was saying. So it turns out a lot of what he said was true. But they did talk to the Washington Post. And so they'd say to the Washington Post, well, we deny everything that he said. Well, because Webb couldn't get the CIA to say anything, people said, well, the CIA says they didn't do it. So that means that you didn't check all your sources. And he said, well, I tried to talk to the CIA. They won't say anything. They won't let me have access to any records. Right. So it was a stupid little game. And I think some journalists have apologized for that. I want to say that a guy who was with the LA Times at the time has apologized for discrediting Webb. He eventually ended up committing suicide. And so this is just one example where white media has really told a major lie that has really hurt black people. I agree with you. I think that black media, it's fine. I mean, it's fine to have media owned by groups that are not African American, that are serving the black community. That's totally fine. But I think we have to make sure we know the difference. And I think that's where we're getting at, right? I mean, do you agree? Do you agree? What do you think?
No, no, I agree. I think we're consumers, and we're not saying that everybody who we're not saying that all black media companies or everybody who serves the black community has to be black. But when you media is so important, because what media is telling a story, and a media they can rile people up to convict someone, and they can do the opposite. They can put out the facts, and very few, if you're honest, very few people are unbiased. Everybody brings with them, when they get in front of a laptop, they have their own biases. I mean, like I said, you're seeing now this biker he was the only black biker, and he's now the face of the of the whole 169 other bikers who are all white. Now he's the face of the riot. That's happening in white media. If that's all you have, though, if all you have is white media, I'm not saying that white media shouldn't exist. We live in a majority white country, but we need to have black owned media spaces where we can say what we want to say without fear of retribution or getting fired or all of that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I'm pushing for. I'm not pushing to push people out. I'm pushing to bring more to push black owners in, and for black people who are out there to say, hey, we got to support Yvette. We got to support Boyce, because they're telling the stories that we need told, and they're doing it unfiltered, and they're doing it for us. They're sacrificing for us. Nobody's, like you said, nobody's driving a Bentley. Nobody's pushing $90,000 Mercedes Benz. Like nobody, like we don't believe in balling. You know what I mean? So we're doing what we feel needs to be done, and we're doing it for a community that we're a part of, a community that we love. So I just hope that people, when they look at that and when they compare us, they'll say, hey, these two people, no matter whether I agree with them all the time or not, I know that, when I look at Boyce and Yvette, their hearts are in it. Their hearts are here with us. And so I just hope that, that means something to people, and that idea of ownership, starts to take root in our community.
Well, speaking of the root, you used the word root. Maybe that was subconscious. That is, I guess that's our cue to quit talking. But our goal is not to diss the root. I mean,
No.
they do very good work. We know people that write for them, but I mean, they're not a black-owned media outlet, and I think that's very important to understand. And I think it's important as a community for us to embrace the value of ownership. I mean, even people as mainstream as Jay-Z are now talking about ownership. Did you see this week where Jay-Z did that diss on Spotify and YouTube and all that? Where he was mad because I know we know Jay-Z, right? It's an eye roll. But the funny thing too, Dame Dash made a good point about this today, because we did a conversation about this, and he said, I don't doubt that what Jay said was a marketing ploy, that he was doing this for marketing, for title and all that. But the fact that that's the direction, that's the way the wave has gone, is a very good thing. That he feels the pressure to even do this, to even sort of do this pro-black thing. That's a good thing, because one thing he said about Jay is he said Jay plays for the team that's winning. And I said, so does that mean in your mind that you think black people are now winning? He said, well, I don't know if we're winning, but we're certainly gaining momentum. And I agree with that. So I think it's a good thing. I think that people really understand the value of ownership. Am I right, or am I right?
But I agree with that. I agree with that to a certain point. I do agree that I think ownership is valuable, and to the extent to which he has accepted that and walked into that role, that's a good thing. We are a black-owned media company, and we leverage that because of what we're bringing to the community, because of the content that we bring, and we feel strongly about that. But to leverage blackness when you're bringing the same thing as Spotify or Pandora is a different thing to me, because you're not telling me that you're necessarily bringing a better product, which is what we're trying to do. You're saying that you should be here. You should be here with me for the sole purpose that I'm black. Ownership is one thing, and I want to see black ownership, but I want to see black ownership do something that's different than what white corporatist ownership does. And we do that. Whether or not Jay-Z will do that, I don't know.
Well, he probably won't, because he is still Jay-Z. I mean, I'm not trying to give Jay-Z a whole lot of credit for stuff he didn't do. You and I both know Jay-Z's track record, but I'm talking about Jay-Z, the politician, in terms of him responding to what he sees in terms of the pulse of the people, the awareness of the people, how that's changed. But you're right. I mean, we know how Jay-Z does deals. You know, he'll bring in a bunch of white guys and they'll make him the mascot. You know, and then suddenly we think it's a black-owned thing because Jay-Z owns 1/15 of 1% of the Brooklyn Nets, like he did back in the day. I guess he sold that 1/15 of 1%, but I agree. I think that there's a difference between being sort of having a black mascot and being black owned, and there's also a difference between being black owned and being 100% black owned. And that's one of the things that I'm glad that we're able to say is that, you know, the stuff that we do and the stuff you do at Breaking Brown, that's 100% black owned 100% of the time. And what that does is that allows us to have a double bottom line that where we're not just looking at how much money we're going to make when we make a decision, we're also able to look at how this impacts the community. So, and that's what you don't get when you're owned by people who are from outside of your community. They have no long-term stake in terms of investing in that community. That's why it's bad to have police officers who are occupying a community who are not from that community, because they're going to just lock people up and not think about what's going to happen in this community when I'm locking everybody up. Say when you have business owners who don't have a stake in the community, well, they're going to just extract wealth and take it back to their neighborhood, and they're not going to think about investing in that community. Same thing with media. When you have media that's not a part of the community, you get what you have with Essence, which is Time Warner saying, okay, what's the bottom line here? How much are we making this quarter? That's all that matters to them. So it's like, look, okay, if we're going to lose money by writing thoughtful, conscientious content that's going to really elevate the community but may not make as much money, or we could write, fluffy articles about makeup and hair all day and celebrity gossip that are going to get, they're going to make us more money in the short term, then they're going to go with the fluffy short-term option and not the more substantive, meaningful option. So I think that's where that ownership piece really does come into play, because these corporations, all they care about is making money. They don't care about the black community, and I think it's something we got to think about.
And they're not going to sacrifice. We talk about sacrificing and doing what we have to do to make this. They're not going to sacrifice. If it's not making money, something's getting cut. You're getting cut. You're getting laid off, and we're gonna streamline this thing to where it just So, to the extent to which we can provide an alternative to that sort of thing, I think we're doing good work.
Absolutely, and believe me, that was put to the test. A couple years ago, when we were really losing a lot of money, I had to go deep in my pocket just to keep it going, because I was like, we got to keep this going no matter what. And I wasn't thinking about money at all at that time. And we're doing better now. We ain't balling, but there were some rough times. And it really, if it had been any other kind of business that I didn't care about, I wouldn't have stuck with it. But I stuck with it because I knew that we needed to do this, because it's important to so many people. So anyway, thank you very much, Yvette. I appreciate your time. All right, everybody, thank you all for checking us out. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. This is Yvette Carnell from BreakingBrown.com. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.